Hi folks, it's Dr. Rob CYWES. I'm the Carb Addiction Doc, and before we get into today's video, I just want to say thank you so much to folks that throw us a few dollars at our Patreon account and especially at our PayPal account. The addresses are in the show notes below, but that keeps this channel free. You can help us by subscribing to this channel and by liking the videos or even leaving a comment. And if you see some of our videos popping up on your feed, click on it for a few seconds. Thanks so much, and now to today's video. Hi folks, this is Dr. Rob CYWES. I'm in the process of a series of lectures or discussions about initiating and following through on a carnivore diet. And today we're going to talk about the diet itself. And when I talk to new people in my office about their diet, now we've done all the ramp up, we've done the testing, we're ready to go. So you followed the first two chapters on this discussion, and we're ready to go. Today is day one. Okay. So number one, look at how often you are able to prepare food at home. The home space is the safest space. Now I realize everybody has a variety of different things, but the first part that we discuss is, for the most part, to the extent you can, shop for your home and clean out your home. So what are the things we're going to do in terms of cleaning out? Number one, get rid of all seed oils. Get rid of all the seed oils. You don't need them, get rid of them. If there are other people in the house that need them, try to separate out yours from theirs. You want your own environment. And the higher fraction of meals you can prepare at home, the more joy you're going to get from the preparation process, but also the more in charge of the quality of the food and the ingredients and the cooking preparation to suit your needs. There's no right way to do this, but there's your way, and your way is the most right way. If you love well-done meat, I don't care. If you like slightly raw or undercooked meat, I don't care as long as it's clean, okay? You decide for yourself how you like to do that, but bring in a variety of oils that you can use in cooking. And again, these are the options, not the mandatory things, but butter is excellent, ghee, tallow, lard. Some people keep their bacon fat. Those are all ways you can prepare and hold on to those fats. Now, again, not carnivore right away, but I advise for you to have these three oils at home as supplements from time to time. And that would be olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil, and possibly MCT oil, as well as possibly a source of exogenous ketones. This is Ketone IQ. Those are things to have on hand. Yes, they're not puristically carnivore, those oils, but they offer advantage as a cooking medium from time to time that benefit you as a healthy source of fat, but get rid of the seed oils. And I don't care if it's Crisco or sesame seed or some fancy oil, get rid of those oils. Put the toaster away. You don't need a toaster. Put away the implements in your kitchen, get rid of them or put them away that have to do with the preparation of vegetables and carbohydrates. Get rid of those. But get your pans, get your cooking utensils, get your grill, get an air fryer if you choose to. Get those pieces of equipment available to you in your kitchen. So home cooking is ideal. Strategies for eating out. Number one, look at the menu of a restaurant online before you walk in and determine not only what you're going to eat before you go into a restaurant, but also determine what the table is going to look like. Make sure that if you're doing pure carnivore, you tell the waiter as they're leading you to your table, no bread, please. And predetermine what you're going to eat. Because if you look at that menu, it's too easy to be influenced that, oh, well, I'm paying for this anyway, or whatever it may be. I'm going to go into the restaurant, I'm going to order a steak. They're going to say, what about vegetables and things? They say, no sides. But also know what source of fat you're going to have available. Make sure they have real butter available. Make sure they have maybe olive oil if they do it. And always make sure that there is salt on the table. Usually nowadays you have to ask for that salt shaker. But set your table up in a restaurant that it conforms to what you're doing. Ask about what they're cooking their food in, and ask about what sauces they're putting on there, and say, no sauces on my food. Just cook my steak in salt. If you want to add some pepper, that's fine. And yes, pepper is a plant. You decide for yourself whether that's something you're going to do or not. I typically do. I'm okay with certain forms of pepper and certain forms of spices, even though they're plants. Your decision, though, how strict you're going to be. I'm not going to say to you it's good or bad, but if a little bit of pepper helps me to live on that steak, I'm totally fine with that. And again, it depends on your personality. So that is the first divide between home versus out. But the more you can eat at home, the better. The second key thing is if you're going to work, if you're traveling, whatever you're doing, most people say, well, I must take this food with me. That is fine, but have a list of foods that you can pack for yourself, know if there's a fridge at work you can store it, know, or take food along that doesn't mind sitting in the warmth of maybe an air-conditioned room while you're at work. Have that available to you, but also intellectually, this is an important component. If you're going to eat at work, if you're going to eat out, a meal is exclusively sitting at a table with a plate of food and a knife and fork and not doing anything else. Don't be sitting there working or in a meeting eating. If you're eating and you're doing something else, working on your computer, in a meeting, traveling, whatever it is, you are eating for your head, not for your body. And unless you are underweight, the default option on a carnivore diet, if you're really busy, is to not eat. You will not die of anorexia. So create the ideology in your head that it's okay not to eat because I will eat again tonight or the next day. So create the ideology that your default option is nothing, or maybe some tea or coffee or water, but not a surrogate meal, and don't eat while you're doing anything else. Either you carve time out for that meal as an exclusive event, or you don't. You know, when I feed my dog doesn't look at his meal over there and say, okay, let me get the newspaper, let me light up a cigar, let me put on TikTok and call my friends. That dog is eating, period. And you want to adopt a similar regime or a similar thing. When my dog is out for his walk, he's not busy eating. So understand the metrics of that and create a meal as a specific nutritional event, not inserting it into emotion management as part of work or something else that you're doing. Okay? That is the first category. It's got nothing to do with what you're eating. It's got to do with how the setup. But the more you can cook at home, the more you can prepare your food at home, especially to begin with, the better, even if you take that food to another location to eat it, like work. The second important part about carnivore, and this has got nothing to do with eating, this has to do with about establishing a pattern of eating. And the next talk is going to be specific to the pattern of eating on a carnivore diet. So, but understand in this slot, we want you to put pattern of eating. Okay? Now, so we've talked about eating at home versus out and strategies. The second one is a talk about pattern of eating, which we're going to address down the road. Now we're going to talk about the specifics of this particular video, which is the ingredients of what we're eating. And the first rule is this: no matter what the internet says, no matter what a dietitian says, no matter what anybody else tells you, when you are selecting food, there are only two criteria that apply. Number one, the more diverse, the greater the diversity of animal products you can eat, the better. The greater the diversity, the better. The second part is the only thing that matters. The only thing that matters in your selection is whether you like something or dislike something, or whether something agrees with you or disagrees with you in your current state. That is crucial. Don't let anybody on the internet, not me, not any other advice giver, tell you that this is good for you or this is bad for you. There are certain situations where you probably should not be eating a certain thing versus other. I'll outline one of those important things. But generally, the greater the diversity of food you can eat, and the likability of the food is going to be sustainable, don't let anybody else on the internet tell you you must or must not eat a certain thing, or you must eat protein or you must eat fat, because they are not you. You need to evaluate that for yourself. However, the second very important anti-influencer message is this, okay? And ask yourself this question as we design a carnivore diet, because we're going to look at macros, we're going to look at micros. Of everything you eat on a carnivore diet, what is the single most important ingredient on your plate of food always? And what is the least important ingredient on your plate of food? Answer that question right now, and then I'm going to give you my take on it. The single most important ingredient on your plate of food is fat. Is fat. Fat gets us into ketosis. Fat is a fuel source. If it is dominant, if you've got a lot of fat in your diet, fat prevents you from using other important foods that have structural and nutrient value from being prioritized as a source of energy, because the human body will always prioritize the provision of cellular energy over anything else it does, and it will steal from your muscles, from other places where you have things that can be made into energy. It will always steal those if you're running at an energy deficit. If you are moving away from a carbohydrate-based biology to a fat-based biology, at first, the human body will always try to turn food that you're eating or your own muscles into sugar. It'll do the steal and it'll preserve the fat. You want to convert your body to being ketosis, to being fat adapted, to preferring fat rather than sugar, and that process can take anywhere from a few months up to 4 years. Fat adaptation typically occurs over the course of 2 to 4 years. Can occur a little faster in some people who've been doing that for a longer period of time, but it is a very long-standing, slow process. So we're looking to fat adapt, but fat is by far the most important ingredient on your plate of food. We'll come back to that. The least important ingredient on your plate of food, by far, on a carnivore diet, is the very thing that most internet people promote, and that is protein. Protein is the least important ingredient. Here's why. Nothing you eat on a carnivore diet is devoid of protein. Nothing you eat on a carnivore diet, nobody's going to be eating, or you shouldn't be eating, sticks of butter by themselves and that kind of nonsense. But no food source that you eat on a carnivore diet is devoid of protein. So you're always going to get more than enough protein. But if you're afraid you're not getting into protein, or if you listen to those internet people that you got to eat 2,000 grams of protein per pound of body weight, please stay away from those people. That may be working for them, but ultimately it causes a liability, and it's a throwback to the 1970s lean protein eating philosophy when people did not want fat. The reason they promote a high protein diet is because most of that protein goes toward the conversion of protein to sugar as a fuel source, because they're not eating fat. But on a healthy carnivore diet, you want to be high in fat base to protect protein, so that most of your protein goes toward muscles and goes toward protein function, and a very small amount of protein is turned into sugar. If you've got no fat in your diet, you're turning all this protein into sugar. You're staying sugar dominant. It's still causing the damage of sugar, and your body's having to handle that. And we'll look at, in one of the subsequent videos, how to manage that. But from a macro perspective, there's only really two things you're eating: protein and fat. Become fat dominant, and your body will not allow you to overeat fat when it comes from a real animal source. Okay? When it comes from a real animal source. Obviously, you can overdo fat when you're pouring oils and things and butter and that type of thing on your food. Try to stay away from that. Try to eat the fat that comes with food, but be fat dominant on your food. Okay? Now, one of the interesting things about being fat dominant, and diminish your protein, because you'll always eat enough protein. And we can measure that. But most people suffer from excess protein rather than too little. So here's an interesting little fact. When you look at the way your animal carcass is prepared, I was just in Africa a few months ago, and I watched a set of lions kill a wildebeest. And the first thing those lions did after the kill is they opened the belly and the chest, and they ate out the abdominal ingredients where all the fat is. Because wild game is very lean in its musculature, but all of its fat is in the thorax and the abdomen. And the first thing those lions did is they pre-selected eating the micronutrients and the fat from the chest and the belly. Think that one through. Then they rested for 3 or 4 hours, and then they went back and ate the lean muscle. Okay? Think that one through, and think that one through in the context of a carnivore diet, and we'll adapt to that strategy. However, when you are ordering food early on a carnivore diet, as you are trying to get fat adapted, this is an interesting comment. As you're trying to increase the amount of fat to offset against and to train yourselves to prefer fat to glucose, and you're trying to get into ketosis, but you're not fat adapted yet, then the healthiest animals are the fattest animals, and the fattest animals are those that have been grain finished. Yes, I said that. They may be pasture raised, but if they're grain finished, and you'll see a photograph of a pig that has been slaughtered, and the one on the left is one that was basically pasture raised. The one on the right was fattened with grain products and soy. And you'll see the thickness of the fat. So early on, you want to eat that grain finished animal that has a higher fat percentage in its meat. Once you are fat adapted, and we can measure that on the blood work, then you want to shift toward pasture-raised, pasture-finished animals that have a lower fat percentage in their meat, because that is towards sustainability of this diet as opposed to getting into a ketogenic diet. So there's a therapeutic component on a carnivore diet, and then there's a sustainable strategy. And eating the higher fat animals gets you through the therapeutic part without having to add sticks of butter and add fat. It's a natural way to eat more fat. And you can slowly adapt to that. However, in the sustainability part, when you're eating less and less often, you want to eat fat, but you want to eat the appropriate ratios that come from a lower fat ratio in a pasture-raised animal. And we'll talk more about that in some of the subsequent videos. However, when you are eating your macros, focus, especially early on, the first 6 months to a year, on the higher the fat percentage and automatically the lower the protein amount, and allow the fat to re-educate you about satiety. Because when you eat a high fat component, fat is your satiety substrate. So fat gets you full early. But obey that, listen to that. Learn to eat way less on a carnivore diet because you are eating more fat. And there'll be days when you take 2 or 3 bites and you say, hey, you know what, I'm full. And there are other days when you eat more, which is fine. But we want to get away from measured. I don't want you to measure anything. I want you to get used to measuring how much you're going to eat based on how you feel. And as soon as you hit that satiety point, you're done. Stop. Okay? So when it comes to macros, early on, eat the higher fat proportion. So choosing the meat that is higher in fat content, the ribeye steak instead of the sirloin or the filet. And if you are eating food that is a little bit on the leaner side early on in your journey, add fat. Add fat to your food. So the first thing I want you to do when you sit down with a plate of food, the first thing before you eat, educate yourself until this becomes an automatic habit, because it's habituation. Look at that plate of food and make sure you can see visible fat. If you're eating a ribeye steak or a lamb chop, you can see the fat. If you're eating some chicken, you can see the skin. Great. If you're eating a plate of food and you cannot see visible fat, even though intellectually you know there may be some fat in there, if you're eating an 80-20 hamburger or some ground beef, there are ways to fatten that up. You can add bacon, you can add an egg, you can add cheese, you can add butter, you can add things like sardines, oysters, clams, mussels. You can add fish roe. You can add olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. You can enrich that food with fat until you can see visible fat. But do not be afraid of fat, especially in the first 6 months to a year of starting a carnivore diet. You want to fat adapt your body in terms of macros, and there will always be more than adequate protein there. Remember, and I'm going to ask this as a question, where does the majority of your protein come from every day? Where is the greatest source of your protein every day? And here's the answer. It comes from recycling in your own body. The human body is continuously turning over protein. And the human body is very effective at reusing and recycling its own protein. So there's this continuous traffic from your body to your liver of protein. And all you're doing when you're eating protein in your diet is you're adding up that difference. There's a recycled component, and then there's a small component of loss that's higher or lower on certain people. And then you've got to look at, if you're trying to build muscle, a slightly greater component. But you've got to take that into account when you're looking at your protein. But remember that you never have to worry typically about how much protein you're eating, other than being aware of not eating too much. And we can measure that in your BUN, in your cholesterol numbers, in some of your blood numbers, your AST, ALT, uric acid. And you want to minimize protein and maximize fat early on in getting to a carnivore diet. And that is my discussion, folks, on the macro component of the diet. In the next video, we're going to talk about the micronutrients, but create the habit of visually looking at your food. If you cannot see adequate fat, add fat by using one of those, I call them my 5 fat friends, fat condiments that you have available to you that you can enrich the fat content of your food. Crucial on a well-formulated carnivore diet early on. Down the road, once you're in a preventive strategy or sustainability strategy, you don't have to add quite as much fat, but we'll also give you the story how to regulate that down the road, okay? Because you're going to be eating less, far less to sustain yourself. At first, you're going to be eating more than you need, and the higher component should be fat to suppress that appetite. We will talk about micronutrients and the pattern of eating in the next 2 videos.